Members of the committee, we are now recording. Nathan, the chair is yours. You're on mute there, Nathan. If you want to unmute yourself, we can start.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up my roadmap for myself here. Okay, welcome. This meeting is now called to order. The roll call has been taken by the clerk. I would like to remind the committee, staff, and our viewing public of the electronic participation policy for virtual meetings, the full corporate policy, number 50 regarding electronic virtual meetings is available online to review. Staff and delegates are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested by the chair or members of the committee. All cameras for committee members shall remain on to ensure quorum is achieved. In the event of a connection or service interruption that affects quorum, we may recess for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw will continue to apply. All committee members participating via online video conference will vote by a physical show of hands. The chair will indicate to leave your hand raised until they have determined the result of the vote. Firstly, we want to welcome back a returning member to the Heritage Committee, Beverly Garner. So on my screen, she's there in the center. I think many of the committee members remember Bev when she was on the committee with us before. She's retired now, I think, archaeologist, and she brings a lot of expertise to the committee. So want to thank her for coming and joining us once again. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest with anything on the agenda this evening? I do need to declare conflict with item 4.2, the 166 to 180 Greenwich Street. As part of my employment, I did research on behalf of the consultant. That is the nature of my conflict. So there are no presentations or delegations. So we will move on to item 4.1, which is a proposed alteration to 152 Brant Avenue. And this was a deferred item from our December 20th, 2021 meeting. I'll ask Sarah Saint-Amand, I believe she is here for us this evening, to do a delegation. Can the clerk confirm that?
Sarah is here. I believe she just needs to turn her camera on.
Oh,
she was here a moment ago. There she is.
Oh, there we go. Good. Good to see you again, Sarah. So just a reminder, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Go ahead and unmute yourself and are free to start.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Do we have the PowerPoint presentation up that I can reference? From like last time you guys had it up so that it was partly, I could speak to it?
Yeah.
Okay, does everybody have a copy of this that they are able to also see? Yeah, okay. Okay, so if you just want to flip to the next slide. Okay, so if some of you may recall, I have been here last in December, as Nathan had indicated, and I am looking to have my sign on the property to represent my luxury interior design firm. We had presented a proposal last in December, but unfortunately, I guess there was a couple of things that the committee felt needed to be adjusted. I've done my best to make the adjustments to accommodate in order to meet the criteria that the Historical Society is looking for. So if you want to flip to the next slide. So as you can see on that first slide, that is my building, beautiful building on Brant Avenue. And then the proposed area of the new sign is outlined in blue. And then the old sign was, back a little bit further. So I'm just looking for a bit more exposure, which meets the parameters of the guidelines outlined. So I have the correct and accurate amount of space and measurements and dimensions. So that is the proposal. And then if you move on here, so this is my new proposed sign. So if you look at a lot of historical buildings, and you can see a lot of reference to wrought iron. So I was what I'm trying to do is bring those elements into play here so that it does have a look of a sign that is current to today, but we also have to be cognizant of the material choices that are being used. So in this case, this will likely be made out of some sort of resin material. I'm not sure exactly, but we do know that it's going to be representative, indicative of historical wrought iron looking. The historical committee last month had advised that they would prefer that the signage come up off of the ground. And when we move forward on the other slides, you'll see that what I'm speaking about. So we have raised that up. The footings obviously going into the ground have to be covered a little bit. This will be done in again, some kind of material that we're going to make sure that it withstands the weather. There was some issue about concrete, which we're not having concrete. I think in the last meeting, it was misinterpreted that these posts on the base would be concrete. It was also very important and apparent that the committee wanted to have a post signage, which we have done. However, we are just capping the post. I've also incorporated a lantern style of light, which again is indicative to the times, the historical aspect. So we are referencing that by doing a historical light. This is a light that we can purchase as of today. If I were to be able to find 2 historical lanterns that I could find at an antique shop, I'd love to place them there, but may not be possible. So here's what I have in mind. My business is solely around interior design. We do luxury interior design. So if you can imagine, I do have a sense of style when it comes to interpreting, the beauty. I've been in business for 22 years. So where you see orange, that will actually be a metallic gold. And it will be also, the color palette is nothing that would be interfering with historical colors. So just black and gold. And then this kind of taupey color on the bottom that will act as a cap and a support material. Adding the bit of greenery to the sides. Again, if you were to look at historical buildings, you would see a lot of combination of some boxwood or some cedars that we're trying to do. We may do a bit of boxwood as well, but we want to just add that little bit of green to it so it looks like it's part of the historical aspect to the sign. So if you move on to the next slide, you'll see the difference between the original one that we proposed in December, and then we've made the changes according to what was specified to us by the Historical Society, asking that we do more of a post style, which we have, and also raising it up off of the ground. So we have done that. So it is more in line with what we hope that you're wanting. I do have a professional signage company, Abracadabra Designs. So he and I have been working hard to accommodate what you're looking for. Again, the palette is a black and a gold. In historical times, I think this would be appropriate and significant to that particular time period. And then moving on to the next slide. So I just had kind of posted or proposed that the post style lantern, if you reference and go to in the Historical Heritage Conservation District, Society has a sketch that references that particular style of post as being acceptable to the historical aspect in Brantford. So I think that I did a bit of research to make sure that we are in fact incorporating these sorts of elements. And then next slide. Also, if you were to look at a historical building, as I said, this wrought iron detail as shown on the image on the right, And also on the bottom is very similar to what we're doing. We're not doing as much scrolly because it is somewhat difficult to do that with what we're wanting to do. So we are doing a take on that type of detail that's shown in buildings in the 19th and 20th centuries. Next slide. I also wanted to reference a couple of properties in Brantford. One being at 2022 Nelson Street with the wrought iron shown on the front fence. So that's again similar to what we're trying to do. And then I'm sorry, I can't see the other part of that slide. It's just too big for some reason. I don't know why, but the building, and I didn't pull it up. Is there any way of sliding that over so that, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but at the top portion of the building on the right, again, referencing the wrought iron aspect. So I think it's indicative to the neighborhood as well, or in Brantford's historical aspect to incorporate this. And as you notice, a lot of times people don't do this creative take on it. And my business needs to have something that is different because that's what we do for interior design. So we do need to stand out in the community as a leader in the interior design industry. Okay, and yeah, so that is it. So if anybody would have any comments about the signage and any questions, I would love it if I had the opportunity to address those, because I know last time I was not able to give you my response, and there was some points that were made that were not clear to me. And if there is any reason as to why you feel my sign is not going to work or what the problems are, and I'm hoping that's not the case, because I have taken into consideration what was brought forth in December, and I've made the appropriate changes I hope that will accommodate. As far as dealing with the location, I've dealt with those parameters. I've dealt with the post aspect. I have also dealt with the fact that you had indicated something around the concrete. And I have basically added what I feel is going to be a passing mark, I hope.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left then for some questions, if any members of the committee have any questions or comments for the delegation. Bev, go ahead. Oh, Bev, we can't seem to hear you. No, you're muted now. You were unmuted, but we couldn't hear you. No, still can't hear you. We'll go to Councillor McCurry quickly, and then we'll try and see if we can fix your audio or something. Councillor McCurry, can you jump in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't have a question. I'll yield the floor to Tamara if she has one.
Okay, Tamara.
As well. Okay, I was going to say, I was Miss St. Almond. I was at the last meeting, and I was at the one in the summer as well when we did approve your first sign plan. I'm thankful that you were willing to amend your design here, and I find it much more appealing, especially for the Heritage District. So I do appreciate the extra effort that you went through for this.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because I do actually, I think it was almost an exercise that was good, because I actually like this version better. So maybe there's a reason that we had a disapproval in the first step. So I think it does definitely look a bit more traditional, which I think the concern was the modern aspect of it.
Yeah. Any other members have any questions for Sarah? I would also just like to echo those comments that I think it added some value to the design, and I appreciate the incorporation of the lamppost lanterns at the top. I thought that was
If anybody knows an antique dealer who has two, let me know, because I'd love to do something that was antique if I could, but it's hard to find two of something.
Yeah. Bev, do you want to try again and see if yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Just two things I wanted to say. Yes, I think the subtleness of the changes to this sign are make it look that much cleaner and nicer to have it up off the ground a little bit. And the second thing is just to welcome Sarah to the Brant Avenue Heritage District. It's a great
Thank you.
stretch of our community, and glad to have you on the
Lovely to
that
be a part
area.
of it. I've always wanted a historical building, and this one suits my needs very nicely. We're going to turn it into a lovely space. And so it's exciting. I've done a lot of research myself on color and history, and so it's kind of nice to be a part of it. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the comments that you have to make. So now I hope you'll approve it, everybody.
All right. Before we get to a motion to approve it, we have a staff report. So we'll have Patrick, I believe. There he is.
Thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Heritage Committee. I'll just share my staff presentation. This presentation is regarding Heritage Application HA0921 as amended for 152 Brant Avenue. I'll endeavor to keep the discussion of the sign a little shorter, as the applicant did a great job. And so just to remind the committee members of the property in question, so this is just a view of 152 Brant Avenue. It is a single detached dwelling, but it's been converted and is now commercial on the inside. So the applicant has revised their sign proposal. So it's just the example provided by the applicant. So the main points of change were the revision of the solid base now to a 2-post design. And the sign face is supported by the posts. And there's also been a slight revision to the top of the sign. The design has been simplified somewhat, and the address space reduced in size just a little bit to sort of balance that out against the scale of the sign and the district. By and large, the applicant has kept all the details that were in compliance with the sign bylaws guidelines. So the location, the size of the signage, and the sign face all continue to comply with the regulations. The sign material, a metal sign face with individually mounted letters, and the letters are actually cut out, as you would see perhaps with bronze lettering on historic signs. The sign uses the muted colors that tie in, especially with the base, to the existing building on the property. The lighting for the sign is external. It is ambient and coach style lights, which, as the applicant had shown in her presentation, are actually something the district study recommended for street lighting within the district. And the post design is now inspired by wrought iron. And the material, while not wrought iron itself, the applicant indicated it's still inspired by and is being used in a decorative way, the way wrought iron was commonly used in Victorian times. So previously, staff recommended approval at the December 20th meeting of the Heritage Committee. And at that time, the committee voted to defer the item. So based on the review of the revised design, staff will be recommending that the new sign as amended, the design as amended, be approved. A recommendation will be shown on screen at the end of this slideshow. But in addition to deferring the matter for one cycle, the committee's resolution requested information regarding 2 post signs within the Heritage Conservation District approved in the last 5 years, and also information about a resolution approved by council to amend the sign bylaw. And that was with respect to removing the word should and replacing it with the word shall. So staff looked at heritage permit approvals from 2016 to 2021. 13 heritage permit applications addressed signage either as a sole component or as a component of several alterations being made. And in reference to an image of all the signs that were approved is included in Appendix B to the staff memo, along with a quick summary of the approval status of each application. But this is a list of the heritage permits that dealt with signage. And so just some of the highlights from the review of the permits. So for those signs in the district, most sign permits did propose a 2-post ground sign. So this is just an example of some of the images contained in Appendix B to the staff memo. At that time, or in that same period, 2 permits proposed awning or other fascist signage. So heritage permit number 219 had signage running along the top of storefront awnings, and application 0619 proposed an awning sign and actually had a vinyl window decal as well proposed. 2 permits within that period proposed signs that had solid bases. And so that was a heritage permit application 0216, that was for 88 Brant Avenue. And then the applicant's prior submission in December, HA 0921 at 152 Brant Avenue. And then in that same period, 3 signs had internal illumination of some form, as well as digital messaging centers. So heritage permit application 0216 and 0517 featured digital messaging centers, and application HA 0216 and 0117 had internal illumination, and those predated the review of the sign bylaw, where internal illumination was specifically added as a prohibited feature of signs. With respect to these applications, Heritage Permit 216 had been approved due to a lack of a decision within the statutory timeframe, so the committee had deferred the matter. At that time, staff recommended a denial because of the internal illumination. The committee provided a deferral, hoping the applicant would come back with a revised design. However, the applicant didn't, and then the statutory clock ran out, and because of the language of the Heritage Act, it was approved automatically. Heritage Permit 0517 was recommended for denial by staff and the committee. That matter went to council, where council ultimately approved that application. HA 0117 was approved conditionally by the committee, and that related to color and the nature of the internal illumination, but the matter went to council and was referred back to the committee. A combination of applications HA 0216 and HA 0117 triggered the review of the sign bylaw, and that is the second component of the request for information provided by the committee at its December 20th meeting. So as a result of applications HA 0216 and HA 0117, the committee requested that the sign bylaw be reviewed, and that was largely with respect to color materials. So staff, and that would have been in 2017, the staff was directed by council in the late winter, early spring of 2017. So staff completed a review of guidelines in other municipalities for signage on historic properties. Returned to the Heritage Committee in the following year in 2018. And then the staff report went to Committee of the Whole, Community Development. And it was at Committee of the Whole, Community Development, where a resolution to amend or a vote to amend the staff recommendation was put on the floor. And that's where the recommendation of changing language from should to shall appeared. So the recommendation before you just reflects what was passed by the Committee of the Whole, Community Development, in April of 2018. The underlined language was added by way of amendment. And that's where the reference is, from changing references of should to shall as appropriate. So staff watched the video of the committee meeting and looked at the draft bylaw that was attached to the report. And we note that during the Committee of the Whole meeting, guidelines 2.2 and 2.3 were specifically brought up as the examples where the language of should was used and shall was preferred to provide for stronger language. And that was raised in comparison to guideline 2.4, which in the draft bylaw already referenced or had the language of shall. When looking at the as approved bylaw, we see that guidelines 2.2 and 2.3 were amended in accordance with the resolution, and the wording of should changed to shall. Guideline 3.1, the draft bylaw, also uses the language should. However, in the as adopted bylaw, it appears that that instance was not changed. We've looked through the records on this file. There's no documentation to clarify exactly why guideline 3.1 was not amended. At this point, we can only assume that it was an unintended oversight. So staff have contacted the legal department, and we're determining if this existing direction from Committee of the Whole in 2018 can be used to amend the sign bylaw in a quick and efficient fashion without requiring additional reporting time or any other documentation. And if we can make that amendment at the direction of the city solicitor, staff will correct the amendment and change the guideline 3.1 language to say shall in accordance with Committee of the Whole's resolution from April 2018. So that concludes an overview of the information that was requested by the Brantford Heritage Committee. Again, the matter before the committee that was deferred was the Heritage Permit application HA 0921. Once again, the applicant has revised their design to address the two posts requested by the committee and has submitted the new design for consideration as part of their application. So staff recommend that the request alter the designated property in accordance with the details described in application HA 0921 as amended by the revised drawings be approved. And so we have revised the wording here in the recommendation, so it specifically calls out the new drawings provided by the applicant. That concludes my staff presentation. I am happy to answer any questions of the Heritage Committee.
Sorry. I was going to thank Patrick for his very informative presentation. Do any members of the committee have questions? Councilor McCreary, go ahead.
Sure, thank you very much. And Patrick, thanks for the presentation. I believe your presentation referenced 4 instances of shalls and shoulds. My recollection of the signed bylaw is that there are quite a few other shalls should have been changed to shoulds, or shells shall be changed, should shall be changed to shalls. Can you say whether or not there are more than the 4 circumstances you've just described?
I'll have to double check, but looking at the resolution that was passed by Committee of the Whole, it specifically addressed the draft bylaw that was attached to the report. And so it was the guidelines that were being amended in that particular resolution. That's where the direction came, and it spoke specifically to the draft bylaw, not the signed bylaw as a whole. So that's what we were able to discover. That was with the assistance of the clerks. Like I said, and we're looking to address the outstanding matter of the should not being changed to a shall.
Yeah, I believe there may be a larger disconnect. I think what was intended was that the guidelines also reflect that the shall should change and not strictly the bylaw. So there may have been a number of errors that were made there. I wonder if you could forward to members of the committee the guidelines and the bylaw, okay, for reference. If you could do that for us this week, just in an email, because I believe we may have some further work to do. And you know, it's all well and fine to engage the legal staff. We've got one lawyer off sick right now. I wonder if, Patrick, if you might just see if one of the senior planning staff could prepare a resolution for Councillor Wall and I to bring to correct the miscommunication that happened. And again, if you could just provide that to Joshua and I in an email, we can look after that. Now, with respect to number 216, Patrick, the one where the window closed, what do you have a recollection of how what the Heritage Committee's answer to the proponent was in that case? Did we ask them? We asked them to come back, you said, but was it deferred?
So through the chair, so in the case of application HA 0216, it was the committee that deferred the item, and that was to, after providing the comments and raising the concerns about the light box and internal illumination, the deferral was to allow the applicant time to come back to the Heritage Committee and provide a new design as was discussed at the meeting. Unfortunately, at that point in time, council had not yet delegated its authority. So heritage permits at that point in time would go from Heritage Committee to committee of the whole and then council for ratification. And the problem was, in that particular case, because of the deferral, there was not enough time for the report to be taken to committee of the whole and then council for the required decision within the statutory timeframe. And that's
So
where
are you saying there was a decision by the Heritage Committee within the time frame?
It was a decision, but it was not a decision, the decision to defer. The decision was not one that can be made under the Act. The Act says it's approve or deny.
Okay.
And because the decision was not to approve at the council level, or to deny at the council level, it was automatically approved.
So should the committee learn the lesson then that instead of inviting people to come back, should the committee be denying the initial application and inviting them to come back to resubmit with the changes that are recommended?
Also, with the current level of delegated authority, we do in our reports as staff, we let you know what the date of the application being deemed complete is and the date a decision is required. So often one deferral can be accommodated. And then at the second meeting, that's where the committee may entertain denying the application and inviting them to come back. In a normal cycle,
Okay.
in normal reporting or committee scheduling, so winter, fall, spring, that can be accommodated in about the 2 to 3 months. That's well within the statutory timeline. When you get to summer vacation, we have to be more cognizant of those timeframes, just because council doesn't meet as often.
Okay, so you can remind us of this discussion then when we get back to the summertime, and we may be faced with a schedule that might be a mirror image of what happened to 216. Thanks very much for that, Patrick. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Alan, did you have additional information that you wanted to add there?
Yes, thank you, Nathan, through you to the committee. I just wanted to point out that with respect to the issue of the shoulds versus the shalls and whether they sit in the Brant Avenue Heritage Conservation District plan, the guidelines as they sit in that document or as they sit as Schedule B to this to the sign bylaw with respect to heritage buildings. Section 2.1 of the guidelines as they're in the bylaw states that in the event of a conflict, that this section of the sign bylaw takes precedence over the guidelines contained in the district studies. So that's where, you know, if the district study says, for example, that signs should be designed to complement and enhance a building's appearance, but we have section
we've lost audio for Alan.
Oh, am I frozen?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sorry about that. I was just saying that in the event that there was a conflict, someone saying, well, this guideline says shall and this one says should, the one that's in the bylaw that says shall is the one that takes precedence.
Okay.
So it is, I think we have got everything to be a shall in the bylaw that will take precedence.
Thank you for adding that clarification. Patrick's gone missing. I was just gonna ask him, I believe this entirely predates Patrick's time on the Heritage Committee. I can't remember. So I feel like it was probably a valuable educational learning experience for him to go back through those reports. And as I recall, the one 216, our issue with that was electronic messaging centers and the introduction of them into the Heritage Conservation District. And that is what triggered the review, which I was involved throughout the process. So yes, thank you very much for your report on that. I know that's a lot of hard work to go in and look at all that information. Okay, so we have a recommendation before us from staff. that the request to alter the designated property at 152 Brant Ave in accordance with the details described in application HA 0921 as amended be approved. Seeking mover and a seconder. Moved
Just to
by-
interrupt.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hi, Nathan. So this is an amendment. The original motion is still on the floor from December's meeting. So we will need a motion to move an amendment that we amend the original motion. So if you want to seek a mover and a seconder for the amendment, then we
Okay.
can vote on the motion as amended.
Thank you for clarifying. I understand what you're getting at procedurally. Okay, so we're looking for an amendment, a mover for the amendment, which is Tamara. Okay, thank you. And a seconder? Councilor McCurry. Any discussion on the amendment?
I have a question. Can the
Councilor
amendment be a
Paul?
friendly amendment, or does it have to, could it not just be friendly to the original mover and seconder?
Yes, it could be if we also knew who that original mover and seconder were from the last meeting. I think this is fine. We'll do the amendment way. It'll be clear. Any further discussion on the amendment? Councilor McCurry?
Sorry, no, I'll wait until it's amended and then speak to the amended resolution.
Okay. So we've never done an amendment here before. So we vote on the amendment and then we vote on the motion as amended afterwards. So we'll actually do two votes, okay? So this is the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Hands down. Lise? She's still with us by phone? No? Okay. Then I declare that carried. Now we're on the motion as amended. Councilor McCurry, you wanted to comment on the motion as amended. Go ahead.
Chair, thank you very much. To Sarah, I just wanted to congratulate her in being in compliance with our rules and regulations, and also for a pretty elegant piece of work. And I think that's probably testament to what goes on inside the building as she works for her clientele. Sarah, there is one thing that I wanted to point out, if you're still with us. Is she still with us?
She is still on the call.
Okay, Sarah, I hate to do this, but you did reference us as the Historical Society. That's a whole different group of folks that operate the Brant Museum and Archives. We are actually the Brantford Heritage Committee. I know it may sound like splitting hairs, but to both organizations, I think it's an important differential to maintain. Okay, again, thanks very much for what you brought to us tonight.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Hearing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Hands down. All those opposed? Carried. Thanks, Lise, for joining us. We got you at that time. So now we will move on to, I have a conflict, so Tamara will take the chair for item 4.2.
Thanks, Nathan. I would ask that Mr. Mark Gladys come forward to speak to the assessment. Is he online already? There he is. And I'll just remind you that you have 10 minutes to present, inclusive of questions. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, you're on mute, Mark. We can't hear you.
Mute. Is that better? Sorry about that. Okay, I'll start again. Good evening. Thank you for an opportunity to present on 166, 180 Greenwich Street, HIA. I'm focusing mainly on 180 Greenwich, which is the only remaining building on the site, as 166 was demolished in 2005. The HIA includes several components in the main body of the report. There's a catalog of high-definition photographs. There's a building condition update inclusive of reconstruction of the original floor plan circa 1964, as the existing interior has been altered significantly. There's a stage 1 archaeological assessment by Urban Heritage Inc., which is Appendix 3, and the biographical summary of Leslie H. Kemp, who was the architect for both 166 and 180 Greenwich, and it's in Appendix 4. So if I can get the next slide. So the subject site is located at the intersection of Greenwich Street and Newport Street in the lower downtown area of the downtown Brantford Urban Growth Center. It is across the street from Clarence Street from the Brantford Commons shopping area, and is surrounded by low-rise commercial development to the south and west, and the Shallow Creek Park forms part of the eastern edge of the site. The subject site was part of the Brantford Canal and was within the Turning Basin, and therefore underwater from 1848 to 1951. A series of interesting maps in the archaeological assessment show the evolving boundaries of the canal basin over time. It is interesting to note from the archaeological assessment that owing to the nature of the subject area, having been created in the 20th century, there is no legal ownership history, chain of title, or occupant information from the 19th century, as the study area did not exist. Next slide, please. Here are several images of 180 Greenwich, which was built in 1953 by the city of Brantford on land that was newly created after landfilling of the Brantford Canal between 1951 and 1953. The building was constructed as a police station and magistrate's court, apparently in only 29 weeks. It was designed by Leslie H. Kemp, and the contractor was Johnson Brothers Limited. Unfortunately, the building and 166 Greenwich, which was the fire hall, almost immediately had subsidence problems, probably due to inadequate dewatering of the soils. Within 10 years, the building required major foundation repairs and was extensively renovated circa 1965. The police function had already departed to another station, and the building had a half-life until the 1990s, when it was again renovated extensively when it became the pollution control office and lab, and later offices of the Facility Services Department. It was closed by the city in 2018 and used for one winter as emergency housing for the homeless in 2019, and was bought vacant and as is by Scale Developments in 2020. Evidence of continuing foundation problems were confirmed by a report prepared in 2013 and reaffirmed by Studio Canoe Architecture in 2021. Next slide, please. So on this slide is a summary of the Ontario Regulation 96 evaluation, which is chart 4 on page 26 in the report. And I'll just quickly go over the findings. So regarding the cultural heritage value of 180 Greenwich Street, we found no design or physical value. Essentially, it's an unremarkable example of modernist period architecture. It has no outstanding architectural or artistic features and has no unique technical or scientific innovations. We also determined no historical associated value. It was built as a civic building, but did not become valued within the community due to the brief period it functioned as intended, which was as a police station for only about 10 years. It is not associated with anyone of significance. It's not associated with the industrialization of Brantford or the canal era. There is a legacy of environmental pollution due to landfilling, and it was designed, as I said, by Leslie Kemp, but it's not the best example of his work in Brantford. We also determined no contextual value. The prevailing area character at the time of construction was industrial. Deindustrialization and urbanization on landfill alter the area character. The area is now low-rise commercial. It was built on landfill, or essentially new land, as a pair with the former fire hall, both which failed prematurely. And it is, as I mentioned, not linked to the industrial heritage or canal era. And the building is not a landmark. To the right of the summary is a building condition update based on 2 reports. The City of Brantford in 2013 hired Insight Engineering to undertake an extensive building condition report, which looked at every aspect of the building. An update of the report was undertaken by Studio Canoe Architecture in 2021, when the proponent took ownership of the building. In 2013, the building had already been found to be in fair condition overall, but many building areas and components were found to be falling into poor condition. 8 years later, when Studio Canoe found had determined that the building was already deteriorating rapidly into poor condition, and their report can be found in Appendix 2 of the report. In summary, the building is in poor condition, and its original design and construction have been negatively impacted by both soil subsidence and interior alterations. And it demonstrates that retention is neither a viable nor appropriate option in this case. Remediation has now become prohibitively expensive to address deferred maintenance, subsidence, and code compliance. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides are going to introduce the proposal for this site, which is proposed by Scale Developments out of Toronto. This 3D aerial view provides the context for the new development. Here you see 2 buildings on either side of Newport Street. 166 Greenwich is to the left and 180 Greenwich is to the right. 166 Greenwich, or Building A, would be an 11-story building with 191 apartments and approximately 41 meters in height. 180 Greenwich is Building B, and it would be 10 stories in height, or 37 meters, with 146 units. Newport Street would remain as a public street and would be extensively enhanced, inclusive of 2 public plazas, a bikeway, and street tree plantings. Here in this image, you see the extensive green roofs and amenity terraces that are being proposed. And also you get a sense of the project has the potential of becoming a landmark in the lower downtown, particularly Building A, by virtue of height, density, orientation, and location. Building A faces west and will provide a dramatic gateway to downtown Brantford and affords the residents who would be living there views towards the casino and the Grand River beyond. It is a prominent building at this location, has been anticipated in the official plan, the urban design guidelines, and the downtown master plan. Next, please. Here is the pedestrian view showing one of the plazas at the corner of Greenwich and Newport Streets. Approximately 1,664 square meters of commercial space would be created in both buildings at grade, bringing a strong commercial presence to Greenwich Street. You also get a better idea of how the 2 buildings create a dynamic 3-story podium street wall contributing to the beautification of Newport Street. A total of 337 apartments in 2 buildings with enhanced streetscapes at Greenwich and Newport Streets are the end result of this proposal. Next, please. So to recap, the HIA was prepared in order to permit the demolition of 180 Greenwich Street and construct the proposal that I've shown you. The proposal only requires a zoning bylaw amendment for height. As the HIA and archaeological assessment have demonstrated, there is no tangible heritage or attribute on the subject site. 180 Greenwich has no cultural heritage value or significance. The building is in poor condition, and there's no archaeological potential and is free of further archaeological concern. Ephemeral is perhaps the best way to describe the heritage character resulting from the rapidity of change on this site. The City of Brantford has been the major change agent on the site with the creation of the new land through land filling of the Brantford Canal, the development of municipal facilities on top of it, which unfortunately failed prematurely due to subsidence. The canal and its turning basin were short-lived, approximately 30 years, then neglected between 1880 and 1910, and then buried starting around 1915. And that is the primary heritage attribute on this site. And unfortunately, the legacy of environmental pollution is the only characteristic persisting from the landfilling of the canal based on our investigation. So I think I'll stop there. I'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. That's my presentation. Obviously, a short recap of the HIA that's been submitted to you, and happy to try to answer any questions you may have today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That almost took up the whole 10 minutes, so there's not a lot of time for
Sorry.
questions, but no, it's okay. It's a lot of information there. Do any members have questions for Mark? Dan? Councilor McCreary?
Thanks, Tamara. No, Dan is fine.
Okay.
Mr. Gladys, welcome. Thanks for all your hard work on this. It's a pretty interesting read. I wonder if you could, you said this isn't one of Mr. Kemp's better works. He did Odeon Theaters, right?
He did the Odeon Theater, which is now in Nipissing's management.
Right.
He did the Brantford Hydro Building and the Foresters Building.
The Foresters Building, okay.
Yes, sir. Obviously, all good examples.
Yeah, and what I think what's on this site is, I don't know if you used the word pedestrian, but certainly that comes to mind. And in as much as the current owner has no use for the building to reuse it, I for one don't think that we have any terrific interest in this property, building, or cultural significance. Thanks, Mark, for the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other questions at this time? Okay, we're going to have a motion on the table. We just have to come up with some comments for the Heritage Impact Assessment to be forwarded to staff. Does anyone have any comments to add? Can I get a mover for that motion? Councillor Wall?
I have comments.
Sure.
So I appreciate the presentation from Mark. It was great. I do like most of what I've seen, though I would like to see, considering this is a Heritage Committee, what elements are going to be incorporated into the building that are going to be reflective of the heritage and the history of the area and the land. And, you know, if possible, any sort of connection, you know what I mean? I imagine it's probably there. I didn't see it in the presentation. I know you had a limited amount of time, but, you know, this is like you said yourself, a gateway to the lower downtown, and having things that can be reflective of the history that was there, or the history that we're making at the same time. I'd like to see a little bit more of that in the design, and perhaps a little bit more of that incorporated, especially into the lower. Yeah, I don't know how to word that. Sorry. Thank you, Tamara.
I'm going to say you would like to see some architectural details added to the new building to reflect the downtown area, or the general, I don't know how you want to do that. Architectural details. Thank you, Councillor Wall. Does anybody else have any comments? To pass on? Seeing none. Can I have a motioner for one comment? No. Julia, did you catch anything else out of there? I've lost Julia Sippel.
Hi, Tamara. I am still online.
Sorry.
It's Lisa Madden, Committee Coordinator.
Oh, Lisa, hi.
So I have that the Brantford Heritage Committee suggests that architectural details specific to the area, the culture, and the land are incorporated into the building.
I knew you would know how to word that. You're excellent. Thank you.
Sorry, not to interrupt. Just to confirm, I mean, those are my comments. I don't want to necessarily speak on behalf of the whole committee unless I have the support of the committee for those statements. Those are my, I didn't see a lot of head nods and smiles, so I don't want to speak for everybody.
We do appreciate those comments. Dan's still nodding his head. Okay, well then I still need a mover and a seconder for that motion then, for a comment based on the architectural details, just as a comment to go back to staff. Dan, thank you. And Councillor Wall? Yes, thank you. All right. So any discussions or comments on that one comment? It was a very intense report. No? Okay, seeing that. All in favor? And Lisa Marie? We lost her, sorry. Okay, opposed? Nobody? Carried. Thank you. And seeing we're moving on to item 5, consent items, I believe Nathan can come on back.
Yeah, I'm here and ready.
Thanks,
So
Nathan.
we'll move on to minutes. Attached to the agenda was a copy of the December 2021 meeting minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes to be adopted? Tamara? A seconder? Oh, Councilor Wall?
I wasn't there. I can't.
Oh, that doesn't matter. You don't have to be there. Only the mover has to be there. Any discussion or errors and omissions that need to be corrected in the minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands down. I declare that approved then. There's one project update with Patrick about our Heritage Register.
Thank you, Chair. We just want to take the opportunity as staff to let the members of the committee know that the Part 2 Phase B Public Information Center for the Heritage Project is scheduled and will be occurring next week. So just a recap was that in Part 1, 98 properties were added by council to the City of Brantford's Heritage Register, and further 731 properties were recommended for consideration. Earlier in 2021, we came to the committee and recommended a phased approach. So we completed Phase A, that was in November 2021. 77 properties were added by council to the register. Phase B is looking at the Central Ward and East Ward South portions of the city. And we have 97 properties recommended for listing as part of this phase. So the meeting will be held on Monday, January 31st from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Notice was recently mailed out to all property owners, and they will be able to register and attend the Public Information Center. Members of the committee are also able to attend. We will be giving a circulation to the committee members tomorrow. I'll just give you the link, and it's also on the city's website under the council and committee calendar. So members of the public are directed there if they'd like to register. Just unlike previous versions where we would live stream them, this meeting will be recorded and posted in the following days to YouTube. And that's similar to what we do now for committee meetings. Like the Heritage Committee, it's recorded and posted on YouTube just a bit later. So yes, the results of the Phase B Property Information Center will be reported to the Brantford Heritage Committee on February 28th. And then we will go to Committee of the Whole and Council in March for a decision on Phase B. I believe I see 2 hands raised, Councillor Wall and Councillor McCreary.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wall.
Thank you, and through you. Sorry, Patrick, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you're going to have the answers, feel free to just wing it. When was the Phase A public information session held?
The Phase A, it was in early October. I want to say the 4th, but I have to just confirm which day was a Monday. So one moment. Yes,
what year?
Sorry, Part 1 or Part 2? So like the high ranked properties that were previously added to the register, or
yeah, all of it, sure. Sorry, I'm leading to a question here. I just want to get the data before I formulate a point, you know?
So we had the Part 1. Sorry, I have the wrong date for the Part 1. It's the Part 2 date, the Part 2 Phase A. That's the most recent phase. That was the PIC was on October 4th, 2021. And then it went to November Council in 2021 to add those properties.
What was the attendance like at that first Phase A, Part 2 Phase A?
If I recall, there was limited attendance. Not many property owners registered. They were all notified, but elected not to attend the PIC. They may have watched it live on YouTube or watched the recording later.
And then the phase one, that was the one we did in person, right? We had that
Yes.
room filled with people.
Yes.
So here's my concern. And I'm sorry, I mean, because I know we're just stuck adapting to this environment that we're currently in, but there's just so many people who are suffering from Zoom fatigue or are just not into this whole approach. And I worry that, you know, if phase A wasn't well attended, I don't expect phase B to be well attended. And I just remember how well attended they were when they were in person. And I don't know how the committee feels about this, but I sure know how I feel about this. I don't feel comfortable moving forward until we have an opportunity to invite people to something like the Civic Center or like Doug Snooks or whatever, one of the other community centers in town, to let them come out. I don't know. Again, it's just how I feel about it. I'm so done with this Zoom stuff. So done. And I don't care if you want to do Google Hangouts, or you want to meet on WhatsApp or Facebook, it's all the same thing. It's just, I think some people, and forgive me, I'm speaking out of turn here, but they don't feel comfortable speaking, or they don't feel comfortable attending, or I don't know. This is just big, important stuff. And we're maybe on the precipice of being able to meet in person again. That's my 10 cents. And that's not directed at you guys. I know you're making the best out of a bad situation with this stuff. You guys are doing the best you can. It's my frustration.
Yeah, I understand where Council Wall is coming from, and I definitely think we do get less engaging conversations on this format, but hopefully soon answers will be turning around on that.
I should have asked a question there, Chair. I apologize. My question was, is it possible for this, when I'm saying we should or shall, but I'm wondering if it would be possible to potentially defer something like, yeah, that was funny, right? The funny one. Is it possible to defer something like this until we could do public consultation in person? Is that even a remote possibility without breaking the whole thing?
So through the chair, while the Heritage Register Part 2, and that's the several sub-phases of that, could be deferred, the project is a Heritage Committee priority. And this is one of the larger Heritage Register projects in Ontario of a municipality looking to add properties across the city to its Heritage Register. And again, this started with the Heritage Inventory, which, while it had 9,000 properties, did not have any statutory weight behind it, and the register does. I believe, you know, one of the reasons the committee has made this a priority is concern of comments that, you know, heritage protection is only brought up at the last minute after studies or planning act applications have come in, and this was viewed as one of the ways to bring those protections in sooner, earlier, proactively, and to get in front of the development process to say that, you know, this property has value. It has statutory protection and recognized for its cultural heritage value or interest. So yes, while the project could be paused until such time as in-person meetings can be held, we don't know how long that will take and like what the capacity restrictions will look like. You know, we are in the wave of Omicron right now. We don't yet know for sure what is going to be the next step. So what might feel like a pause for 1 month or 2 months, we may find turns into 6 or more, just because none of us can tell the future. So yes, the short answer is yes, while this could be paused, it is a priority because we wanted to protect these properties proactively. Pausing the project could negatively impact some properties.
I won't take any more floor time except to say, yes, it makes sense what you're saying. It's such a sucks. Thanks. Thank you, Patrick, thank you.
Councilor Perry also had a question there.
Chair, thank you. Not a question, but a comment. Is it possible? I can appreciate Councillor Wall's concern. Is it possible for us to provide an alternative way for folks to send us their comments? We could do a direct mail piece to them, to the owners, asking them to provide their commentary. Is that possible?
So through the chair, so the notice that was mailed out to property owners is also provided right now on the council and committee calendar, and it provides that they can participate by telephone if they want. If they don't have a computer, they have my contact information and the planning department's general line if they wish to send an email. They also have the mailing address for the city, so they can send written letters in. And any written letters, emails, calls, anything that is provided by a certain date will also be collected and provided, made available to the Heritage Committee and Council. So we do give people quite an array of ways to submit comments or ask questions and find out how to participate and what this means. The mail out also includes frequently asked questions. It answers some of the questions they might have. So instead of worrying about what does this mean, well, we actually have that question as part of the mail out. It's right there for the property.
Sure. Okay. Patrick, now could you outline the ways and means to add an additional property to our register?
So this process was based off the methodology selected by ASI. If there's another property that is to be considered, committee could or pass that information to staff, and we can pass it to ASI and determine, you know, with the budget that was set aside to continue the next phases, can this be slotted in the next phase if it geographically makes sense to go in the next phase, or do we potentially save it for a future phase and consolidate any other such properties? But I would need to talk to ASI just to sort of have a dollar count or a dollar figure, just to know if a significant number of properties come forward, what does that do to our budget? And then we may need to go back to council.
Yeah. So let me mention tonight the fact that the corporation of the city of Brantford is soon going to be in the process of decommissioning and replacing the iconic water tower that's at King George Road and 403. And that, I think, is a property that's got some pretty significant local importance. Okay, so that's one I'd like to see us have a look at. I'd hate like heck to lose that structure because we didn't think of it in time. Okay, so if you could, Patrick, if you could see that we give some consideration to that, and maybe next month, if you could provide an update on your inquiry.
To the chair, I can do that. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick.
Alan, did you want to add something in there too about that?
Just to say that I think, yes, we could certainly see where we could slot that in with the remaining phases in the project. I don't think it should be too onerous to add one additional property. If something's been identified that we need to consider, I think we can look at that. With respect to the consultation, I certainly appreciate the point that Councillor Wall was making. We always want to try to get more people to come out to these meetings and attend. As far as, you know, whether we'd want to defer this work, I mean, Patrick spoke to the importance of it, and that's a priority for the committee. My concern is that, you know, we defer it, and then at the end of the day, we still wouldn't get a great turnout. I think part of that's just due to the nature of what this consultation is about. It's about adding properties to the Heritage Register, and I think it's important that with the mail out that went to each and every property, and again, as Patrick said, it indicated other ways to provide comments, but it also included that frequently asked questions. And I think through reading that, a lot of the owners are realizing that, you know, it's actually not a big deal to have your property added to the Heritage Register. So there probably isn't a great level of concern that might drive people out, as opposed to a situation where, you know, we were maybe going to designate a property, or where we were having some consultation about establishing another district, for example. I think that might be a situation where we'd be able to generate some more excitement, certainly amongst that area where we're proposing to designate a district, that we certainly would have a much easier time getting people to come out. So just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Thanks.
Based on that discussion, I have one, hopefully, well, two short, hopefully additional questions. So stemming from Councillor Wall's train of thought, how quickly would we be able to shift to an in-person format. So like if we were confident in the summer, would we be able to have an in-person consultation in the fall? Or what kind of time frame would we have to look at to be confident of that? I think that's something that's important. As soon as we can have an in-person Heritage Register consultation, we should. But that's a big question of when is the right time.
It's hard to say right now without you know, the way the conditions are. But you know, if you had asked me that question back in the fall, you know, we were asking that very question. Do you think we'll be able to have these meetings for the Heritage Register in a public forum as opposed to online? So I think we were thinking by the time we were moving into the summer, we would be having in-person meetings. So I'm hopeful that later in the summer, we'll be having in-person meetings. I think we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But for the time being, we're going to have them virtual.
And the second quick question was, this is phase 2B, and phase 2C coming up after that would be Eagle Place.
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Just Eagle Place or something else? I can't remember.
I'll have to pull up the map to be exactly sure, but I believe it is basically all of Ward 5 south of the Mohawk Canal.
Yeah.
There's the bulk of the properties are going to be in Eagle Place. There's not too many historic properties flagged for listing out by the wastewater plant. But.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know. There's a lot. I've done a lot of plunking around in the maps in that area recently, so it's good to get some bearings for what's coming our way. Thank you, Patrick, for that update. 7 is subcommittees, which are not meeting at this time, so there's no updates. There are no resolutions and no notices of motion. So I would entertain a motion for the meeting to be adjourned. Suzanne, thank you very much.
I thought we were going to hang out for longer. We could just talk about history. I'm having a good time.
Good to see everyone, and look forward to seeing everyone in February. Bye for now.